Hey guys, welcome back. Alright, so in this video I'm going to be looking at Micron technology and giving it my full stock breakdown. Now in my stock breakdown I'm going to be looking at the risk that MU is as an investment, the overall investment strategy I think most investors are going to be looking for out of Micron technology, and what do I think is going on with the company and where do I see them going in the next few years. If you're new to my channel, make sure to stick around and subscribe. I go over stock news, investment strategies, and overall financial literacy for the average user. Alright, so Micron technology. Let's jump right into it. Alright, so a broad look at MU is that it is a semiconductor stock that focuses on two different semiconductors. It focuses on NAND and DRAM. Now, for those of you who aren't really into the tech world, NAND is pretty much the main semiconductor when you look at a solid state drive and, mass storage. And DRAM is the semiconductor that is used for, say, RAM in a computer, and the thing that you generally look at when you go to a laptop and it says like, I got 4 gigabytes of RAM or I got 8 gigabytes, 16, whatever. These are the two semiconductors that MU focuses on, and they are viewed as somewhat of a commodity in the overall PC world because the price is generally cyclical. However, the direction that I think the overall computer market and MU are taking these two semiconductors, I think it's going to start to slowly break down that cyclical pattern. And so I'll explain that here. Now, if you look at MU's breakdown right now in their revenue, 27% of their revenue comes from NAND, so that solid state drive semiconductor, and then 67% of it comes from that DRAM or that RAM-based component. Now, MU has publicly stated in their last few earnings reports that they believe that in 2018, while they believe that their overall revenue is going to be going up, they're going to be shifting where the majority of that revenue is going to be coming from. They see that their NAND revenue is going to be above the industry average, and they think that they are going to let their DRAM dip to below the industry average. Now, some people may look at this and say, oh, they're not going to be selling as much as their main revenue source, must be something going wrong with the company. In my opinion, no, it is a great strategy that this company is taking because NAND prices are rising faster than DRAM prices, and there's a lot more room for growth for NAND semiconductors than there are for DRAM, mainly because the solid state drive is still fairly new in the overall grand scheme of things, and not many low-grade laptops and low consumer-grade products come with an SSD. They normally come with a hard drive, that old blocky drive that, it has a lot of storage, but it's really slow in comparison and things like that. And in the future, I see hard drives completely getting removed and solid state drives, becoming the only thing that everybody has, and a hard drive will look like what a floppy drive does now. So, if you look at the revenue breakdown of MU over the past quarter and the past year, MU has increased its revenue quarter over quarter by 13% compared to the industry average of 10.7%. So, MU is beating out the industry, not by much, but it is beating out the industry, showing that it is a leader in this frontier. But then when you look at the year over year, you see MU has increased its revenue by 118%. It has doubled its revenue in 1 year. Now, a lot of that is to do to the cyclical nature of these semiconductors. However, when you look at the overall industry only increasing the revenue by 70%, MU still has a massive over 40, almost 50% plus revenue increase compared to its peers. And these peers include companies like Western Digital, SanDisk, that was now acquired by Western Digital, and Samsung. So right now, MU is in a fairly good spot as far as revenue growth, and it seems to be leading the pack, at least as of for growth. Now, that's going to be taking me over here for what type of investment I see MU being for, the average investor, and what investors are going to be really looking into MU over the next few months to the next few years. And I believe that that is going to be growth investors. This massive growth, year of having triple-digit growth, is something that all growth investors are kind of fiending over, and they really want to be taking a look at to see how much longer can this company keep it up and how much of that money can they get for themselves. And then long-term investors. These people are going to be looking at MU and kind of the overall computer market as a whole. Now, when you kind of look at it, the solid state drive and the RAM are kind of like the muscle and the meat to the average computer. You have the CPU, which is like the brain, but What the average consumer really utilizes is the hard drive for, they want to be able to take out their files very quickly, and RAM for people that are either really into gaming or they want to be doing very intensive programs such as, video editing or any type of Photoshop, things like that. Those two components are very important, and in my opinion, from a tech standpoint, those are the ones that are generally replaceable. They're much more that people are generally trying to constantly upgrade and get more of in their system. Like, I personally run 16 gigs of RAM right now, and I might be bumping that up to 32 just to see what's going on. And I'm currently shopping for either a new 2 terabyte hard drive or a 1 terabyte solid state. I'm just trying to justify the price difference. But if I could right now, I'd go to the SSD hands down. So when you think about that, as far as like these commodity items, yes, their prices are cyclical. However, the need for them is like a consumable. It's not like a CPU where you buy it and you're set with that one CPU for, 4 or 5 years. You buy one of these, and generally if you constantly want faster speeds, you get more. Or if you're constantly, growing the amount of of downloads that you have in your computer, you're going to be buying more. And I know that that's not really as big as far as the laptop space. It is much more likely when you have a desktop, or if you're an enthusiast, or if you're a server or a company, that you're buying multiple hard drives and large batches of RAM to keep beefing up your system instead of switching the CPU. Because you can continuously beef up your RAM with no problem. They're just interchangeable. You can't really pop out a new CPU and upgrade without changing the entire system. So a lot of people look for RAM and their storage to really give them an extra boost when they start lagging behind their competition. Now, so going on to like what the major news and what the major directions that MU is going in as a company is actually kind of interesting. Now, they have this past year, they have finally developed, and they've had it developed for almost a full year now, and they're going to be start rolling it into consumer products soon, is the 3D X-Point NAND module that they have developed with Intel. Now, the fact that they are partnered with Intel is also a great, footing for them, because that allows them to have a lot of partners and a lot of contracts to go through them. But Intel also gets a cut of the profits, but they get to use Intel's name and their resources, so it's a win-win for both companies. Now, this solid state drive is kind of groundbreaking. It is the first time that they really step away from the generic NAND architecture, and while I don't know the ins and outs of both of these two architectures, it's pretty much a fundamental breakdown with the amount of storage that you can have per unit, or per cluster, and how fast those clusters can go. You're looking at about a 10x to 20x increase in both storage and speed. And when you look at it, you're like, what happened when everybody first saw solid states for the first time? This is an even bigger jump than that, which is kind of outstanding. And that means that, MU currently being the only company, MU and Intel being currently the only companies that are selling this and have developed this, means that they can start taking a massive market share of companies that are really trying to innovate and really get on top of their technology fast. They have a large market that they can just kind of get, and no one's going to want to go to the slower solid states from Samsung until Samsung catches up and starts to pump out drives at that speed. So, in my opinion, this shows that they are, they're being the frontier of innovators, and they are really developing systems that the average consumer is going to need in the future now, which means lots of money that are just going to be kind of raking in over the next few years. Another thing to think about is that MU is indirectly a play on autonomous vehicles. Now, autonomous cars, a lot of people think that they're here to stay, or they're going to be here to stay, and once they start becoming mainstream, everybody and their mom's going to want one and everything like that. And if Tesla can ever make a fully, affordable autonomous car, I personally can see that just kind of being widespread across the world. But until that happens, it's all kind of speculation when you invest directly in autonomous vehicles. However, the average autonomous vehicle, the average Class 5 autonomous vehicle, is expected to have anywhere from 40 to 80 gigs of RAM in it. And put that in perspective, the average laptop that you buy right now, that's, not a low end, but like the higher mid-end range of a laptop has about 8 gigs of RAM in it. And when you multiply that by 5, you start seeing a massive amount of revenue that's going to be coming in to DRAM suppliers such as MU, and they're also going to be utilizing NAND, or solid states, in order to bank all of this memory, so that way they keep a running catalog of all of these learning patterns that they are now storing, so that way the car can become smarter and smarter. So both of these semiconductors are going to be needed very in abundance whenever autonomous vehicles start becoming a regular thing. So that's when the long-term investor starts to come into play with the Micron technology play, because one, the industry is booming, but two, it doesn't look like these commodity-based semiconductors are really going to become a commodity anymore. They're going to become the lifeblood of the majority of chips and devices that are going to be coming out in the future. Another thing to look at is Internet of Things. All these individual computers that are, supposed to be like household devices that need to communicate with each other, they will also need small storage devices in order to, one, process with the RAM, but two, also to hold on to all their information when companies want them to really be learning. Like, machine learning is great, but you do need a place to store all of that machine learning. And unless they store it all in the cloud, all of the things that the device needs readily available immediately is going to have to be on board, generally with a solid state if you want it fast. So all these things add up to MU is posed to have a really good 2018 and possibly even greater 2019. Now, the main risk for this, and if we go over here, the main reason why I give the risk level of MU a 2 out of 5 is because while I personally believe that this is the way that future is going, we could get 1 or 2 more cycles out of these two commodity semiconductors. Now, what that means is that if you want to be a growth investor, just abuse this trend, and until this commodity starts to end its cycle, you're going to be expecting massive growth. For the long-term investor, I would say, start a position now if you believe in this type of industry space, but don't go all in, because on the off chance that it does become cyclical, you could start really dropping the value of these conductors, which, if you know that it's cyclical and you know that it's just a matter of time before it goes back up, you could be getting these companies at a dirt cheap price just waiting for the next rise. So while Micron does have risk, I don't believe that compared to the other semiconductors, it is anything more than a bargain. Now, something I didn't bring up is that Micron's PE ratio is ridiculously low. Its forward PE ratio is between a 4.5 and a 5. Now, that's where value investors can come into play, and they can really start looking at this company like, oh, the average semiconductor company's price to earnings ratio is between, 15 and 20. Why is this so low? And a lot of that is due to the nature that a lot of people give NAND and DRAM, is that they believe it's cyclical, so a lot of them bank on against the company. So they really disbelieve in it, so that way they generally have lower PE ratios than normal. However, even with the cyclical aspect of these companies, if you drop their revenue by half, you're still looking at a below average semiconductor PE ratio. If it dropped by like 90%, you'd have an issue and that PE would go really high. But think about this, as a little safety net, you can have a 50% drop in revenue and still have a undervalued semiconductor. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't think many value investors are looking for the semiconductor space, which is why I didn't put them as one of my investment types that would really be looking into it. Mainly because a lot of value investors don't like the uncertainty that comes with semiconductors. So while it could be a great pick if you really want to be up to date with tech and you have a tech background like I do, I don't believe that the average value investor is really going to be looking at MU for anything special. So that's about it. I hope you guys got some good information off of this. I hope you enjoyed my breakdown. If you have any thoughts on Micron or any other semiconductor or any other stock in the market, drop it down in the comments. If you have any feedback you really want me to know, I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about this. If I was unclear about any, news article or, major point that I think this company is going in and you want me to give a further explanation, feel free to ask questions. I'm always here to answer questions. I really love researching stocks like this. So, anything that you guys have to throw at me, just throw at me and I'll see what I can do. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe. See ya.